Well, it's another episode of All Things Faith Walk. We are here again to talk about the Word of God in practical, meaningful terms. Yes, real life situation, how we look at the church, how we look at our walk with the Lord, how we look at our position in a local assembly, how we respond to the commands of the Father. That's what we're going to talk about today. Very, very practical, very practical. And I believe this will resonate to you today as you hear this discussion. So I have Ashley back with me, Ashley Routledge. She was with me a few weeks ago when we talked about deconstructing the Word of God. So she's that good that she's back. Yeah, so guess what? We're going to talk about, I'm just going to jump right into it. I've been looking forward to this discussion because there are views about it, and I've never actually met a person who is pro church hopping. Yeah, this is my first time. So there it is. We're going to talk about church hopping today, and the thumbnail on YouTube and on the podcast platforms. The name of this episode is going to be named "I Am a Church Hopper." Isn't that interesting? I'm a church hopper. So that's what we're going to talk about. Ashley, is there anything you want to say as a way of introduction for those who don't know you, never been on before? Or you can go back and listen to the
Yeah,
other episode to
yeah.
find out who Ashley is, right?
Yes, thanks for having me. Yes, I have a podcast called the Black Sheep Christian Podcast, and it is basically embracing your faith differently.
And that kind of matches with her podcast, right? Embracing your faith differently. She must be embracing her faith differently to like church hopping, right? Um, okay, so I like to start with definitions just to make sure that everyone is on the same page and we understand what we mean by church hopping. Define church hopping for us. To you, what is a church hopper or who is a church hopper?
Yeah, so I'm really speaking exclusively based on my experience, but basically, church hopping is just that you are hopping from church to church. There's really no roots in it. For me, it's more of an exploration, while others it may have a different definition to them. But yeah, church hopping is you really don't have a church home, or sometimes I just enjoy going to a church just to check it out. Why not? See how the people move in there. But yeah, church hopping is just that. You're just hopping from church to church. It's not a church home.
So, do you go to? I know there probably isn't a cookie cutter answer for this. Um, a church one time, or do you like
Yeah,
go for
good
a little
question.
bit before you move on, or yeah?
Yeah, great question. Sometimes I stay at a particular church for a particular for a period of time. There's
Mhm,
been times when I just went once and just never went back.
mhm,
That's usually based upon the experience.
of
Um,
course. Mhm.
when it comes to that church and how they welcome their people.
Yeah, and you said a pivotal thing there. How they welcome their people. Church,
Yes.
how they welcome a visitor to a church is like first encounter with a business. It's like
Yes.
customer service. I never forget it. Years ago, I went to a dry cleaner a few minutes from my house, and that's where I usually take my clothes. And one day I walked in with my clothes to be dry cleaned. She said, "Hi, Miss Downer." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you know my name. I can't believe it." I was like very shocked that you know my name. And that made me keep going.
Yeah.
So the greeters, very pivotal, very, very key. It's
Man.
almost the face of the ministry. That's your first impression.
Yeah.
So there it is. So about what's the longest you have hovered around a church before moving
Mm. I kind of slowed down in my church hopping. Now there's a new church that opened up in my area, so I'm like,
and check it out?
I'm thinking about checking it out. But when it comes to church hopping, the longest, that's a really good question. I never really
I read
quantified
it. Yeah,
time
yeah.
as far as staying. It's really more of a spirit thing,
Mhm, mhm,
check a place
mhm,
out, go a couple of weeks.
mhm.
Um, see how they move. It's really more like people watching, you know. I
Uh-huh.
really take in the greeters, the not the how people do in praise and worship, not people on the stage in praise and worship, but the congregation praise and worship, you know, because you can not always, it's not always a measurement, but when people move, when they hear the music of God, that's just a beautiful indication about where people are in that particular community with their walk with Christ. But
So
now,
if you go to a church and you see these strengths, you were greeted um, nicely, welcoming.
yeah,
They worship, they're active worshipers, they're engaged in worship. Your check marks that because it looks like part of your church hopping is almost data gathering.
yeah, yeah.
It's okay. So if you're gathering the right data and you're getting good small standard deviations and high means and high percentages, I'm talking statistics. Just don't pay me any mind. Um, do you consider staying there and why? Why not?
Yes, this one that I've been hanging around for quite some time, it was like a church hop, like, oh, I'm gonna check this place out. And then I stayed, and it was funny because I was in a point where my church home wasn't fitting my needs anymore. And it's funny because I don't normally stay for the sermon. I love the Bible study. I love Bible study. I eat it up. And I remember the particular Bible study comments were being said that I was just like, I need a break. And so I remember I was church hopping to a church, and the pastor was like, "What did they say?" Because he knew I wasn't a regular. So, and then I confided with him, yeah, come here if they say something, you know, that's totally left field. And then I just come here and hang out for a little bit. And then I just go back after I recover because it's a beautiful church overall. And so, hopefully I'm answering your question, but hopefully I'm answering your question because as far as when it comes to, um, you know, being greeted, is the word being said correctly, and all those check boxes. Sometimes if the spirit says for me to stay, I stay. And so in this instant, I've stayed probably about a couple of years.
Okay, okay. That kind of gave it a halt to your church hopping, actually.
It has. Now, like I said, there's a church that recently opened up, so I'm kind of like, hmm.
So I'm going to ask this: why do you church hop?
You know, great question. I love part for me is the exploration. I love Christ, and I love the way in the context of religion and theologically, if I can even say that word correctly.
Theology.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. I love learning how other people worship God. And so, I mean, that's why we have different denominations. You know, Catholics do something different than the Southern Baptists, and they do something different than the Lutherans. So, I just love studying how people approach God.
Mm, mm, mm. So, do you think moving around from one congregation to the other, how do you think that impacts your spiritual growth? Or does it impact it at all?
Yeah, for me, it impacts it because one of the issues when it comes to Christianity in America
Mhm.
is the rules. I'm going to take, for example, it wasn't recently, it was actually a couple of months ago, I read from the highest of the Catholic Church, you know, they said that in order for communion to be legit, you need to drink wine. And so, people had an uproar about it because they're like, well, what about those who can't drink, those who shouldn't drink? You are excluding. So when it comes to church hopping, it allows me to understand and to be more open about how people um, approach God in their own way and their spiritual walk. I remember a teenager came to me and they're like, well, I'm not going to eat meat, even though they believe in God. I'm like, well, Bible says you can, eat meat. But Paul also writes that if that's a hindrance for you, then I shouldn't be stopping you if that is what you're being called to do. And so by church hopping, it has allowed me to be more understanding about how people and their relationship with God.
But you could study it, Ashley. You could
Yeah.
study it. But you
Yes.
chose that this is your main way of learning in real
Yes.
time. So now I want you to talk to me about the balance between how the value in being connected to a community, in being
Mm,
connected to a local assembly. I'll give you an example. I was a member of a church for 38 years,
mm,
8 years, more than half my life, right? Grew up there. The highest income part of my life, I was there, poured into that church financially, time, treasure, talent, you name it, without restraint, no holding back. That was my heart. Left there under totally unexpected circumstances. If someone told me I would have left that church in that way, I would have told them, you are crazy. And when I left there, I hadn't planned it. It wasn't on my schedule. It was brewing and I did not know it happened. Okay. Um, when I left there, I did not miss the ministry. I didn't miss the preaching. I didn't miss the teaching because I was giving more to the ministry than I was getting, if that makes sense.
it
Sometimes,
does.
yeah, you can reach to a point where you're giving, you're pouring in, but I was not getting from the ministry. I was being fed, but not from there.
Yeah.
That's why I was able to continue to give. But what I missed the most, absolutely the most, had a broken heart, was the relationships,
Yeah.
the community, the belongingness. That's what almost killed me. And I'm not speaking figuratively. I mean it. That's what almost take me out of this world. So being a part of a community where you matter, at least to some people,
Yeah. That is a fair point.
meaningful, healthy, reciprocal relationship. It's so significant. So how do you balance that as a believer? Because we are not made to do this walk by ourselves. We're made to do the walk in community. If you look at the church and in Acts how the church started, it was community. And even Hebrews 10:25 remind us that we should not neglect the assembly of the saints together. You're not neglecting the assembly, you're going in an assembly, but that connection, how do you balance that out?
Yeah, that is a very good question. First and foremost, um, that's a beautiful story to even share. To be with a church for 38 years, in itself is just a beautiful testimony, to be part of that community. And God wants us to be in community. Um, but also too, church is just a building. And so it is a place where people congregate for a purpose, to worship the Lord. But there are a lot of people that are outside the church who worship God that don't come into the church. And so, as I was church hopping, I didn't feel separated in any shape or form because, I have coworkers who also, have a journey with God. And some of those conversations are probably one of my favorite conversations. And, communities where you build it and community with God is essentially is beautiful in itself. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a church. in order to have that. So for me at that time, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I didn't feel like I was missing out because I was still having a set group of people
You
who
had
were
connection. You had a
still my
community. It
connection,
may
who
not be
were,
a
yes.
congregation, but okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. And it was a small group of us.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
at that time when I was church hopping, like what I said, part of it is the exploration and the discovery. But another thing too, I was at a time in my life where um God was, I mean, he's still changing, but I mean, we were going through a lot of changes together because of certain events in my life. I had my daughter,
Yeah.
her father passed away the same year. So it was a lot of moving and shifting. And so I'm thinking of Christy is her name, one particular person who was a great coworker. And man, she has a powerful testimony about how with her walk with God. But her and I had beautiful conversations when it came to me learning about who the Lord is.
Couple of things you said that's really, really good. One is the definition of church that you gave is just a building.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we say, "Oh, I'm going to church tomorrow," or "I have a meeting after church."
Yeah.
You see, church right there is used in two different ways. I'm going
Yeah.
to church tomorrow. I'm going to the building tomorrow called church, and I
Yeah.
have a meeting after church.
Yeah.
Um, Interestingly enough, those two definitions don't address church the way church really is, because church is, well, in a way, it does and it does not. Church, it can be the building, the
Mhm.
temple, the tabernacle. It can
Yeah.
also be a group of people of common faith who come together to worship the Lord. So, church, the real meaning of church is a body of people, called out people. It's the
Yeah.
people that is the church. So, let's go back to because my point was community and connection. Let's go back to the small group. And I'm glad you mentioned that,
Yeah.
because what matters is community. What matters is connection with people of faith.
Yes.
Matters is connection with people of faith. And I'm not here to tell the listeners don't go to church, don't be a part of a church. And I'm gonna share this. When I left that church, this was 2017. I call it church homeless. I was church homeless for 6 years. 6 years, and I was church homeless for 6 years because I did not see a church I wanted to go to. I did
Yeah.
not see a church that I thought was fitting for me.
Mm.
And I promise you, I grew in that 6 years more than I grew probably in the 38 years in that church. But a lot of it I grew in this house, in my room with resources and materials. But over those 6 years, I was still a part of a small group of women that I fasted with, that I prayed with, that I did Bible study with, that I read books with, that I met with, that I talked with. So I still had that small community. They
Mm.
often tell me thanks for the group, but they had no idea what the group meant to me, because I don't think I would have survived without that group in that season. What am I saying? At the end of the day, we need community.
Mm.
No matter what it looks like, we're not made to walk this walk alone. So even though we're talking about church hopping, it's not to encourage anyone, cut off yourself from everybody else. I'm just going to do this by myself. We still need, that's the message I want really to be resounding, that we still need that community, because then you're still assembling yourself with other believers as we are mandated to do in Hebrews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Valid.
Yeah.
Very valid. And then another thing too is when thinking about the word church, I mean, the early church didn't have a building. I
Right. They
mean,
went from house to
whole
house.
purpose. Yeah, I mean, Jesus didn't really need disciples. I mean, when you think about it, but he created a community knowing that he wasn't going to be here around for long. So when he did ascend to heaven, there was a group of guys who were able to support each other and assist each other
Bible to
and be
stand.
disciples as what God instructed them to be.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The community is good. Praying together. I mean, Praying in your personal time, devotion, that's powerful, that's wonderful, that's totally essential. But I tell you, nothing beats corporate prayer with other believers.
Yeah.
Worshiping Him by yourself, but that when that anthem goes up in unity, in worship, in song, in praise to Him,
Yeah.
nothing is better than that. You can't do that in your bedroom by yourself. Can't do that in your basement by yourself. That community is essential.
It's
Yeah,
no
it's
fun. It's no
very,
fun.
very essential. So we
And
really
and and
want
then another thing too is the devil, that is his main tactic is to
get you by
separate.
yourself. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
And every time that comes up, I always bring people back to um, the mode of operation of a lion. First
Hmm.
Peter 5 says, or he's like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour, right? So when the
Hmm.
lion is out in the wild, seeking whom he may devour, he looks for the straddler. He looks
Yeah.
for the one that wandered from the pack. My God. He looked for the one that's way in the back by himself. Look for the weak link. The
Yes.
lion does not attack the pack, go in the middle of the pack, right? So that's why he wants to get us by himself, by ourselves. So that now
Yes.
we're separated from the pack. We don't have that crowd around us. We don't have that support. We're getting weaker. Then he can prance on us.
Yes. Great example.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What would you tell? What would you tell a young person that that may share? It's just me and God. I'm done with church. I'm done with. I hear it, organized religion, and I'm old school. I believe it's a plan of the enemy. The church is the bride of Christ, and iron sharpens iron. Hebrews 10 again, 25. I may want to read it to the hearers. We come together to encourage one another and to do so even more because it's the end of time. It's coming soon, right? So, what would you tell a person who, I'm tired of unorganized religion. I'm just gonna, I'm done. It's just me and God, and I've heard it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Great
just
question.
talk to them.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, organized religion has its issues. But at the same time, what I try to remind people is that as humans we messed it up. I mean, it didn't take long. I mean, Adam and Eve, it didn't take long to mess it up from the very beginning. But the issue isn't God, okay?
Oh,
The issue is just people who just mismanaged
wow.
in order that hindered you. But at the end of the day, God is going to talk about you and him and your relationship with you and him. So if you're going to go up and be like, listen, they just didn't handle, God's going to be like, well, I was still here. So you still had access to me. Just because they did what they did doesn't mean that you should not have stopped having a relationship with me. Because at the end of the day, it's between you and God. And so how the way if you want to stop going to church, there's still a group out there for you. It's a matter of you still having faith and still taking that time to find that group. Because when we meet with the Lord, God isn't going to say, well, because it's what Susie did, what Johnny did, what Amy did, how they stopped you. He ain't going to talk about nobody else. He's going to talk
That
about
is
you.
so good. That answer, right? That's my answer too, and that answer is for all the people who have separated themselves from the church because of
Yes.
church hurt.
Yeah.
People hurt you, not God.
Yes.
People are flawed. People are broken. People hurt you, not God. Can I say it again? It is people who hurt you, even if it's your pastor. It's a
Mhm.
another broken person that hurt you. It's not God. So as Ashley mentioned, he's still there. And so the question is your relationship with him or your relationship with people? Or were you looking to them or were you looking to me? I
And here's another thing too. here's we don't realize tests are tests until probably the end, there's been times in scripture, like Job, for example, David is another example in which God used Satan to test faith. And so when it comes like with church hurt, how we treat each other, there can be tests within those relationships in order for God to shed something from you for you to be a better person. And then there's a lesson and for that person as well, for them to be a better person. And so we may not see those tests when we're triggered in our traumas, but when we're on the other side, that's what testimonies are for, you
Absolutely,
know?
absolutely,
That's what
absolutely,
testimonies are for. And
absolutely,
Job is a testimony. Like
absolutely.
Job was just like, I couldn't have been Job. Job was just stripped
It
of
means you
everything that he deserved. He deserved everything that was given to him the first time. And so for him to go through that test, as I said, he had every reason to say, because everybody around him was like, I don't know why you're still with God, because if this is how he's treating you,
And here's
I
another example. David
right.
has a testimony as well because
Yes,
the senior to him who should be mentoring him and
yes,
covering him sought to kill him. And this is
yes,
why David said, if it was an enemy, I could have borne it.
yes,
Yeah, if it was an enemy, I could have borne it. But it's my brother. We went to the temple together. And
yeah,
so it's the person you do praise and worship with that did it to you. It's the person you went to the convocation or the convention or the retreat or the conference with. It's the person who prayed over you. It's the person who teach Bible study. yeah,
yes,
it's the choir director. So David didn't say, I'm done with Yahweh, I'm done with God. He continued to serve the Lord. This is a relationship with Him. It's not a relationship with people, and it's not a relationship with church. Yeah.
yeah. Paul is another example. I'm trying to think of the guy's
Go
name.
on and on, right?
When it was Saul first, rode to Damascus, and then, he was blind, and God went to a brother and like, listen, I need for you to go talk to Saul, who will be renamed Paul. And I mean, he had every right because, I mean, at that time it was genocide. And so he was hurting people, he was slandering people who followed Jesus. And so for him to be able to have that walk with faith, to go to somebody who knowingly was hurting God's people. I mean, we wouldn't even have the New Testament.
Yep, the bulk of it. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. So hurt will come, and it's not a reason to separate from the body. First and foremost, it's never a reason to separate from God. Yeah. And honestly, if you don't separate from God, you're going to love his people. Let me say
Yeah.
that again. You simply cannot love God and don't love his people. And if you
Yeah.
love somebody, you don't cut off from them. you,
Yes.
it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. You can't say I love God and just don't want to be around his people. It doesn't make sense.
Correct. It doesn't because we did the same thing to God. I mean, that's why we're in this predicament.
You don't want to be around them. That means you can't pray for them. You can't serve them. It's so people. Let's think about it. Let's think about our relationship with Him. At the end of the day, it's our relationship with Him.
Yes, because I mean, when you think about it, we hurt God.
Yeah,
All God wants is for us to love him.
love Him. Yeah,
And
serve Him
and
right.
and and,
Yeah,
and we broke that relationship many times.
yeah, yeah.
But yet we're still here because he still wants us to have a relationship.
Mhm.
Hence, another reason why there's no excuse.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I want to talk about one more concept
Okay.
concerning church hopping before we close out. And it's that I'm not sure if you've heard it. I did I think it was a retreat several years ago, and their theme was grow where you're planted. Grow
Mm,
where you're planted. How
mm,
does that align with moving from one church to the other?
mm. That's a great question. I never really aligned those two things with church hopping because you're really not um the disadvantage with church hopping is that you can't really grow. I mean, you're like a leaf in the wind, you
Mhm.
know. You're just moving as the spirit leads you.
Or
Um
maybe as your mind leads you, potentially.
yeah. Valid point, valid point. So you really can't grow where you're planted because as seeds need stability.
Mhm.
First and foremost, once you have stability, then you're able to receive water, sunlight, nutrients from the ground in order to grow.
And I admire your your willingness to look at it from both sides and acknowledge both sides. You've shared some of the advantages that you find in church hopping, but then again, you also see the downside, the disadvantage to church hopping, because you're right, the seed has to go in the ground, has to be
Mhm.
covered up, has to be.
Mhm.
If you uproot it and transplant it too soon,
Yes.
die, right? And even some plants, you have to be careful when you transplant it. Sometimes we take it out and put it in a soil area, an area that's not as rich, not as good for it. So it doesn't thrive. And we just want to pay attention to our walk with the Lord, to connect to him in a real and genuine way. I'm thinking now even of John 15, and I know that's connecting to the vine. That's not connecting to a church. So it's
Mm-mm.
not a direct 100% explanation of what we're talking about now, but just picture that vine and the branch, right? Connect
Yes.
connection. And part of connection is connection through group Bible study, connection through group prayer, connection through group worship, accountability to a spiritual leader. And I know some of us are running away from it because of past experience. I could
Yeah.
run too. I could run too. But I know that if I'm going to continue to grow spiritually, I do need a spiritual
Mm.
father or mother, right? So
You
yeah,
do.
those are kind of the things I wanted to pick around on the issue of.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when my parents knew I was church shopping, it wasn't a secret. And I think I really concerned them because I think they were fearing like, oh, she's gonna stop,
Right.
her relationship with the Lord. But for me, it was really just exploration,
Mhm. Mhm.
and just to see how people move and yeah, just to see how people move and how different denominations. I mean, that's when I really learn about denominations is with church hopping
Interestingly enough,
yeah,
sorry, that's really interesting because you don't church hop within a denomination. You are open to seeing other
yes.
denominations. Yeah, isn't that's really interesting?
Yes. Yes. And I think denominations is one of the most I wouldn't say misunderstood. Like people just don't know. They're like, well, what do Lutherans do versus Catholics do? What does Southern Baptists like? When you think about it, knowledge wise and knowledge base, um, generally people just don't really understand how each denomination moves and why they move the way they move. And that's part of knowing the history of church, you
Yeah.
know?
So before you got to the denomination part, I was going to ask you if there ever was a concern of being exposed or being taught to false doctrine, false teachings.
Yeah, great question. So I have a daughter and I never took her with me.
Wow.
Like knowing that. I never took my
Mhm.
child with me to different churches. So it was just solely me doing it. Um, yes. And that is another piece when it comes to church hopping is you can't be ignorant
You have to
Immature.
have a level of maturity so you can
Yes.
discern truth from falsehood. Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, that. And one thing that I'm starting to learn and I want to create a study for is how to read the Bible. And I'm not talking about, just opening up and just reading a word for word. But that's part of knowing your word and being mature and knowing discernment. One prime example is knowing how to read the Bible is I remember, and I wish I should have wrote it down, at the end of Second Samuel. Joseph doing the census, right? And he received word to do the census. And Joab was like, I'm not sure we should be doing this. And David's like, we need to be doing this. And God was angry. And how the verse was written, you thought God told David to do the census. But part of maturity is that he was lowercase, he wasn't
Yeah.
uppercase.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that makes a huge difference in knowing who he
Who
is.
the he is. Yes. Yes.
Correct. So part of church hopping that needs to, as a prerequisite, is to understand how to read the Bible and have that discernment. Because for someone who's immature, they'll think, oh, well, why would God be upset with David? He was the one who told him, no, that wasn't God. That was the devil that was speaking to David to do the census, which is why God is angry. So part of it too is being mature and to know and have discernment that when somebody is preaching or something to something to the Bible study or to the congregation, you should have a pretty good foothold or have a resource to be able to easily access of somebody who is strong
Yeah.
in the word to know that doesn't sound right to me because that's why we're in the situation that we're in today because people they're not in the word long enough to be able to hear God. It's like counterfeit money. You got to touch those real bills constantly. And then when you touch that fake, you'd be like, oh,
Feel it. Yeah.
this is a fake dollar.
Mm,
You
mm,
know, I
absolutely.
feel it, I know what it looks like. This is a fake dollar. And so reading scripture is like touching that money constantly because once you feel that counterfeit, you're gonna immediately throw it out instead of being cheated.
Real good. Real good. There's so much more I could talk about. There's the structure of the
Yeah.
church, how the church has come to leadership, and the things that make a person want to bow out of a congregation and go somewhere else and check and shop for just so much. But I think if I should leave the listeners with a final thought is the Father wants us to develop a relationship with Him first.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can serve our church, we can serve our ministry that we are linked with, but know that everything we should do as unto the Lord. So we serve Him first. And if we serve Him first, the person who is set over us as our spiritual leader, they will be pleased. And also, we want to remember that we are called to community. We're
Mhm.
called to community, definitely. Jesus didn't call one disciple, he called 12 and made 12 apostles. And he gave the church apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, and evangelists fivefold ministry, not one. And so
Mm.
we're called to community. The church is a body of called out believers that worship in a congregation. So yeah, um, church
Yeah.
hopping, very interesting topic. When she told me she's a church, I was like, I've got to talk to you. Things happen. Don't cut off from church. Don't cut off from God first. And again, if you love the Lord, you're gonna love His people. If you love His people, you're gonna want to
Mhm.
be around them in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a small group. We've also agreed on that point. So that's some of the nuggets we pulled out of it. Anything you want to add anything you want to say to the listeners as we head on out?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Once
Tell
again,
them
I
about your
enjoyed.
podcast again, actually.
Yeah, the Black Sheep Christian podcast. It is just interviewing people who are embracing their faith differently. Like what I said, part of church hopping was exploring God's people.
Yeah.
God's people are beautiful out there. And, sadly, statistically, church is one of the most segregated spaces in America.
Yes, it is.
And one thing, you don't need to church hop to go out and meet God's people. But if he's speaking to you, don't just stay in those walls. If God's saying, I want you to create a ministry to do this, or I want you to do that, meeting God's people is just really beautiful. It's one of the most greatest things that he gave us.
Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So there it is, listeners. I am a church hopper. I pray you got something out of this episode. As always, we are very grateful for you to be on All Things Faith Walk, whether you are watching or listening. We talk about practical things that help us to be good disciples of Jesus Christ. So this show would be nothing without you. This podcast would be nothing without you. So thank you. Thank you again. My name is Rosemarie Downer. Website is booksbyrosemary.com. Facebook and Instagram, Books by Rosemarie, Books by Rosemarie Downer. You can get devotionals, leadership materials, emotional wellness and healing materials, books on forgiveness, Bible studies, tons of materials, therapeutic playing cards, workbooks, tons of things on my website. So check it out. And again, check out Ashley's podcast. And I'll be a guest on her podcast in December sometime. So you don't want to miss that. Looking forward to that discussion. All right. So again, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. And may the Lord continue to bless you.